Hello everybody, welcome to Songwriting Simplified with me on my own, Jonny Lipsham. Unfortunately, Jonny Guy could not be with us tonight because he has family issues to contend with. It's going to be a little bit kind of like this for a little while longer, I think. But, you know, all will come good in the end. All will come good in the end. I'm sure of it. But yeah, our thoughts and prayers are with Jonny and his family. So that's kind of what the story is. I'm not going to go into details because I don't think that's very fair on Jonny or his family, but that's kind of just what it is. And we are all going to have to be patient. We're going to have to be kind, compassionate, and caring towards Jonny and his family for this period, this season that he's going through. And he needs us. And we're going to have to be there for him for this season that he's going through. He's been through a lot, the poor guy. So, yeah. That's just kind of where it is with that. So, I'm here on my own, and that's okay. I have you for company, and you have me for company. So, we will do fine. However, it is, as Jonny advertised, a Q&A show tonight, so there's no specific topic. Although I did have one that I wanted to talk with Jonny about on the show tonight, but we can save that for next week. So if you want to see what that was, be here next week on hopefully Jonny's channel. But yeah, it's going to be a little bit improvised for with Songwriting Simplified for the next few weeks, maybe the next couple of months. So we're just gonna have to hang in there and be flexible. All right, so let's get into seeing who is here. And I think Sean Aaron was first in the door. He was a whole hour early, which is impressive. He even beat Billy Morgan, so that's impressive as well. Billy's here, Roger Becker is here, and Dave is here as well. Or should I say Dave's not here. John Hawk is here, John Edgar is here, Charlie Dillon is also here, which is great. Let's see, Don Oliver is here, Paul Morgan, Luke is here, John Edgar, I've already mentioned him, Just Bob is here as well, and of course, my dear friend, Papa Raptor Music is here as well. So there we go. That is all the folks that are in chat right now. If you are watching for the first time and you've not checked this show out before, this is Songwriting Simplified. Normally it is me and Jonny Guy who co-host, and we normally talk about a topic or a subject or an issue related to songwriting, composing, arranging, and you know, those kind of things. And then we talk about this subject together, and then we have a Q&A section at the end of the show. That's kind of how it normally works. Now you may find that you are unable to access the chat. You will need to subscribe to my channel in order to do that. And in about 10 minutes-ish, the chat will unlock and you will be able to have your say and ask a question, which would be really cool if we can get some questions in. So if you've got questions, get them in the chat now. And don't forget to put at Jonny Lipsham Studios at the beginning of your questions so that I can pick it out from all the just general chat amongst yourselves. That would help me a lot if you did that. So yes, so please subscribe, please hit the notification bell. We are marching inexorably towards 5,000 subscribers. We are, I think we've got less than 140 more subscribers to go before we get to 5,000. So that would be awesome. And I would really appreciate it if you guys could help me get to that fabulous 5,000 mark. And then, of course, the next thing to do is to double up and get to 10,000. And then from there, actually getting from 10,000 and on up is actually a lot easier. It's easier to get more subscribers when you actually have a good number of subscribers. But when you're kind of a still small kind of 3,000-4,000 channel, it's tricky. The YouTube algorithm does not make it very easy. So I rely upon you guys, my faithful subscribers who have been here for a long time, sharing my videos and posting links to everywhere you can think of where they will be useful, and getting family, getting friends, getting people you know, colleagues involved, also helps a lot, and getting them subscribed as well. And hopefully we can build an awesome community here, and we've done pretty good at that so far, because there are people here in the chat who have been watching my videos, subscribed to my channel, and being part of my Sunday night live show for 5 or 6 years, or in some cases 7 years. You guys are awesome, and I appreciate every single one of you. As Billy says, slap that thumb. Yeah, absolutely. Like a good bass player, slap the thumb. Get those likes coming in, and subscriptions and all of that would be a great deal of help. All right. So let's see. John Ecker is happy to be here, which is awesome. Very happy for that as well. And Luke has a question, which I'll get to in just a wee minute. Jonny G has, John Ecker has a question. He says, Jonny G has a method for installing Studio One based on a series of steps. Do you have a particular approach to installing new updates? There are 2 ways to install updates for Studio One, and I'm talking updates, not a new version. I'm talking updates, so incremental updates in a particular version, which are all free, by the way. If you are new to Studio One, that's one of the benefits of being being part of Studio One, is that all the updates within a version are free. So that means all the maintenance updates and also the incremental updates as well, where new features are added. All of those are free. Between version 5 and version 6, there were more than 150 brand new features added to Studio One that were totally free. And that's how it works. So there are 2 ways that you can update Studio One to the next build. One of those is on the start page. You just click the check for updates button. And when you click that button, if there is no update available, it will tell you. If there is an update available, it will say, haha, there is an update available. And then you can just click yes, or whatever it is. And then you can update from inside Studio One. So you don't even have to go to your account and download the update. You can just update from inside Studio One. That's the first way, and that is in fact the easiest way. There are some extenuating circumstances where that might not work, but 99.9% of the time that is the best way to do it, and that is going to be the easiest and quickest way to get the update done. Sometimes when you are doing an internal transfer from your account like that inside of Studio One, sometimes it may not work. It will just say failed. That's nothing to do with your internet connection. Sometimes all it takes is for your bandwidth to just drop just a fraction, just for a hair of a second, and for the transfer to drop a single packet. If it drops a single packet, it fails the whole download. So if that happens, then you can just try again. And if it still happens, then the next thing you can do is method 2. Method 2 is to log into your my.presonus.com account or sphere.presonus.com account and go to products, click on Studio One 6, and on the product page that follows, just download the installer. The installer will download whatever build it is that is available. It will always do that. So if there is a new build, it is in your account, and so whichever method you are using to update Studio One, that is how it works. So if you're doing it internally inside of Studio One, it is still doing the same thing. It's just doing it inside of Studio One, but it's pulling it from your account. So if you do it by method 2, which is actually just manually doing that yourself, download the installer, run the installer, and it updates, then you're effectively doing the same thing. But in that instance, you shouldn't get any drop packets, because it kind of downloads in a slightly different way when you're downloading it manually than if you're downloading it from inside and doing transfer inside of Studio One. which is why the second method can still work quite well, actually. So yeah, both methods will work, and both methods will just update you. You don't need to activate again. All you need to do is just once it's updated, you just need to relaunch Studio One and it will launch into the new build. And that's how it works. And if you're not sure what's been added to the new build, or you know what bugs, if you're interested to find out what bugs have been fixed, then you can go to help and you can download the release notes, because there is a button in the help menu. I think it's the help menu, or is it view? I can never remember where it is. Where is it? There it is. In help, view release notes, and that will download the release notes and open them up as a PDF, and then you can scroll through and you can see what's been fixed or what's been added. All right, so that's how that works. Bob says, how can you merge two separate songs together in Studio One to create one track when they are different tempos? You cannot have a song that has different tempos at the same time. So, because music doesn't work that way. So whatever the song tempo is for the song, you can use time stretch. So if you're bringing in a track from another song that, let's say, is at 70 beats a minute, but the song that you're working on is 100 beats a minute, then providing there is tempo data embedded on that audio file in the first place, so that it's, you know, the 70 BPM tempo is embedded on that file, then when you bring that into Studio One, you can go to the inspector and turn on time stretch. And when you turn on time stretch, the audio file will then stretch to the 100 beats per minute. Or compress, I should say, because you're making it faster. So it will shorten it. It will compress it to the 70 beats a minute, and it will make it play at that faster tempo. Sometimes you might find that there is a loop from a loop loft library or something like that, where maybe you like the vibe of a particular loop that may be at 70 or 80 BPM, but the song you're working in is 120 BPM, and you want to try it out. So long as there is tempo data embedded in that file, drag it in, and with time stretch enabled, it will play at the song's tempo. So that will work, and you can certainly I keep getting notifications. You can certainly bring in audio files from one song into another one pretty easily. So yeah, that would be how you would do that. Oh dear God. I wish people would stop hitting me with notifications. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this. I'm going to mute you. There we go. That should deal with that. All right, so let's see. Next question, Peter Brooks. Since I'm updated to Studio One 6.0.1, it has crashed a few times. Would you suggest I submit a ticket? Yes, I would. If it's crashing and you don't know why, and when you relaunch and you get the little safety recovery dialog box and it doesn't tell you what has crashed, sometimes it will. Sometimes it will say, hey, this caused the crash, or whatever. If you're not sure what caused the crash, then definitely submit a ticket and send that crash report to Persona Support, and they'll get you taken care of. Okay, Dave, who is not here, has a dumb question. He says, is it a good idea to chart quick piano chords by adding V2 atop the chord as second inversion? If you want to be specific about a particular inversion that you want your piano player to play, then by all means, either notate it. So on actual notation, either in the score editor in Studio One or in Notion, make sure you spell out the chord. Say you want a second inversion chord. Well, you're going to have the fifth at the bottom of the chord, the root above it and the third above that. So you just need to know where those are on the stave and notate them. Or you can, if you want to be really, really old school, then you can go for figured bass from the Baroque period. That was the beauty of the figured bass, was you had a bass part, and then below the bass part were two numbers. Those two numbers indicated the intervals above the bass note to be played that would spell out the chord. And that would also therefore spell out not only the chord type, but it would also spell out the inversion of the chord. So it's basically chord changes long before chord symbols were ever thought of, and long before Nashville numbering was even thought of. But yeah, if you want to spell out a particular inversion, you can either notate it, or you could say second inv in brackets underneath the chord if you want to. If you want to be really specific about what particular inversion of a chord you want. Most good piano players will know kind of what inversion to play. And you can always, if you're talking to your piano player in a recording session, you can always say, hey, that F major chord at the start of the song, I want it to sound quite bright, so maybe a second inversion would be a good idea. So the CFA would be how you'd want to do that. And you can just say second inversion. A good piano player that's had at least a small number of piano lessons will know exactly what you're talking about. Or if they've got, a reasonable grasp of music theory, they will know what you mean by a second or third or fourth or fifth inversion chord, depending upon the number of notes in the chord rather. They will know what you're talking about. So good piano players will know that stuff. And also good piano players will know kind of by experience and by instinct as well what inversions are going to work well for getting from one chord to another. I do this all the time, and sometimes I change how I voice a chord, having chosen a particular voicing to start with. Then maybe the next time around the song I go, maybe that voicing was a little too bright for the mood of this particular song, so maybe I will go for a first inversion chord instead of, second inversion, which is definitely a little bit brighter. And then of course root position in a triad is definitely the brightest of them all, but maybe I want that little bit of darkness, and I want that particular voice leading going into chord 4. So yeah, depends how specific you want to be with your piano player. John Edgar says, do you have more than one version of Studio One on your desktop where you can toggle between different supported versions? I personally have Studio One version 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 installed on this computer. This is Windows 10. Studio One 2 does work on Windows 10, but you have to activate it offline every time. Every time you boot the computer, because online activation is no longer supported for versions 2 and 3. And version 1 if you have version 1, but version 1 won't even install on Windows 10. So version 2 will just about work on Windows 10, kinda. After a fashion, it does kind of work. You have to futz about a bit with it, a wee bit, but it does work. Version 3 will work on Windows 10. Version 4 and 5 and 6 all will work on Windows 10, but the only ones that require offline activation are versions 2 and 3. And I have those on here even though they are not supported anymore. In fact, technically speaking, version 4 is no longer a supported version of Studio One. But it will still work. It will still work. It just won't work on the newer builds of Windows. So like maybe the last build of Windows 10, it probably won't work on. And in some cases, it won't work on Windows 11. It's not really designed to work on Windows 11. So if you encounter issues with Studio One 4 on Windows 11, there's nothing we can do about it. I'm afraid. You're kind of going to have to upgrade to version 6. Really, to be honest. But yes, I have all of those versions on here. Now, the thing with Windows is you cannot open more than one version at a time. On a Mac, On certain builds of Mac OS, there is a way around that where you can actually have version 6 and version 5 or version 4 or whatever. You can have those different versions open at the same time. There's a way around it, but it's not supported to do that. But there is kind of a futsy way around it that you can do it. But yes. But yeah, you cannot have, generally speaking, you cannot have more than one version of Studio One actually open and running at the same time. It just won't work. It's not designed that way. But yeah, that's a good question. Just Bob says, I have a song which is 120 BPM, another song at 80. I like to add the 80 BPM at the end. Hang on. I'd like to add the 80 BPM at the end at tempo of 80 BPM for fade out. Oh, right. So you're going to have to do tempo automation then. So you will need to use the tempo track, and you'll need to, wherever that point in your song is, you're going to have to do tempo automation, change the tempo to 80 for that particular spot where you want to bring that that other song into your current song. If you want it to play back at 80 BPM. So you can do it, but you're going to need to use the tempo track to do that. Good question. Let's see. Luke has said, what is this formula? He believes it's all about telling a story without lyrics, telling the story. I have no idea who you're talking about, I'm afraid, Luke. But yeah, we've covered that before, to be very honest, Luke. We've covered that before. Songs are stories. They just are. That's the name of the game. You know, when you're writing a song, you're conveying a story. You're telling a story. Whether directly or indirectly, you're telling a story. I mean, there are some modern pop songs where there isn't really a story. There's just kind of like sentences that loosely hang together, and I couldn't really call those a story. They're more like vague ideas, vague concepts. You do get that in some art music as well, like some German speech song from like the 1950s, 1960s. You'll get that where it's actually just words. It's just a series of words that have a particular sound, and really the composer is more interested in the sound of the words and trying to find the right notes to really encapsulate that particular sound, and then finding, you know, other supported sounds that will emphasize the sound of that word. You get that. But that's kind of, European art house music. It's not really what you're going to want to listen to on the radio, particularly, because it's not very tuneful. Just isn't. But, that kind of music does exist. And usually, I think a lot of it grew up in kind of the Hamburg electronic music scene of the late 1950s, beginning of the early 1960s, and prevailed through until I think the early 1980s before, bands like popular kind of electronic bands like Kraftwerk came onto the scene in the 1980s, and well, they were just geniuses. I mean, it's not really my kind of music, but when I listened to it, man, Kraftwerk were awesome. They were a great, great outfit. They were a great, great band. And I think underrated. Certainly here in the UK, I think Kraftwerk are underrated, to be honest. Okay, Luke gets it. That's cool. Let's see. Any more questions? Because those were a good crop of questions we got there. And we are halfway through the show. Let's see. Roger Beckett says, can you talk about modes and the emotion for each one invokes? How do you construct a mode? Is there a mathematical formula? Here's the thing with modes. There are two types of modes. There's major modes and minor modes. The ones that we most commonly deal with are major modes because they are derived from the major scale, just starting the major scale on a different degree of that scale. So if I take the C major scale, I'm going to flip over to piano for this. If I take the C major scale, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then the octave. All right, so we've got 7 notes essentially plus the octave in the C major scale. So if I was to play just those notes, starting on C, that is the C major scale, but it is also C Ionian mode. It has a Greek name. It is a mode, believe it or not. So if I take that same scale, but this time start it on the 2nd degree of that C major scale. So C major scale starting on D. It's a little bit darker. And this would be the Dorian mode. Gets used a lot in modal jazz from like the middle 1950s through to maybe the late 1960s. Yeah, to maybe like 1964, all of that kind of stuff. And then the next one, if we start on the 3rd degree of the scale, I forget the name of this one. But this one has a real kind of Mediterranean, maybe even a slightly Asian or North African kind of sound to it. And it's because you start with this semitone. So you might hear this in you know, kind of Spanish music quite a lot. So Chick Corea, the great jazz piano player, the now sadly departed great jazz piano player, was fond of this scale. And then the next one after that, if we start the C major scale on F. Decidedly weird sounding scale. And this one is called the Lydian mode. That one I do know. And then the next one, and that's actually pretty popular. This one actually, if you're improvising, works really nicely on if you use it to improvise over something like a major 7 chord. Kind of a bit like this. So there's my F major 7 chord. And it's all because of this note here, the sharp 11 of the chord. Like you can literally put a G major triad on the top here and get this really gorgeous sound here. Sounds very, very beautiful. And then the next scale after that is called the Mixolydian scale. This is where you start on the 5th degree of the scale. And you will find this in Miles Davis's song So What, which is kind of, I mean, So What is based on the Dorian scale. And then it goes up, you know, it's like up and down semitones, but you know, you get this. You get that kind of thing going on, but you can use the Mixolydian mode quite a bit as well. You can interchange the Dorian mode and Mixolydian mode over that particular song quite easily. And then after that we have the Aeolian mode. Phrygian, that's right. Phrygian is step number 3. And then this one is weird. This one is the Locrian, I think it is. And it's not easy to write a piece based on this mode. And the reason is because you've got 2 semitones in the scale. And of course, your chord 1 is going to be a diminished chord. Which is just weird, you know, chord 1 being diminished. No, that's just odd. But it does exist. John is reminding me of this, of the names. Yes, the Phrygian one is the one I always forget. I don't know why, but it is the one I always forget. It's the one I have always forgotten. Ionian is C major scale. Dorian is C major scale starting on D. Phrygian, C major scale starting on E. Lydian, C major scale starting on F. Mixolydian, C major scale starting on G. Aeolian, major scale starting on A. And of course, Locrian is the C major scale starting on B. Now, these can be transposed anywhere you like. So you don't have to have a Dorian mode starting on D. They're not limited to just the white notes. You can transpose these. So if I want Dorian mode starting on F, it would look like this. Basically, if you take any major scale and start it on the 2nd degree, you will get the Dorian mode every time. Okay? So, in this case, to get F Dorian, we need to think in E flat major. So, E flat major scale. Okay? But we're going to start it on F. And that's how that will work. And then, you know, if you carry on up the scale. And so on and so forth. And of course, you'll get that nice Lydian sound on the A flat. Sounds great. So yeah, so that's how modes are constructed and how you can use them. All right, let's see. I think I missed a few questions here. Ember is here. Hello, mate. Good to see you. And Ember says, is Notion 6 the end of the line and being replaced by Notion Mobile? And will Presonus make a statement regarding the future? I'm not authorized to speak to any future developments of Presonus products, whether that's hardware or software. There are things I know, but I can't tell. Not allowed to. I will get fired if I do, so I can't speak to that. So yeah, unfortunately, I can't answer that question for you. But one thing I can say is Notion 6 is still awesome. Notion Mobile is kind of a new thing. It actually replaces the old Notion for iOS app, is what it does. It's not the replacement for Notion 6. That I can tell you. Notion Mobile is not the replacement for Notion 6. Notion Mobile is the replacement for Notion for iOS, which has been around for 10 years. And so, yeah, Notion Mobile is the replacement for that. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people who used Notion for iOS for all of those years, the highest voted feature request for Notion for iOS was, hey, can we have this kind of as a cross-platform app? So that, you know, if I'm working on a score on my iPad, it would be great if I could then send that to my PC and work in the same program on my PC, because they may not have a Mac. Not everybody has a Mac. So we went, you know what? Darn it, that's a really great idea. So why don't we just make it cross-platform? Now, we couldn't do that with the actual iOS app itself. because it's written on a completely different code base. So we needed a code base that would work on Mac, PC, iOS, so that would be iPhone and iPad, Amazon Fire OS, Chromebook, and Android. So we wanted to make it available for Android phones as well. I mean, you know, otherwise people would be just like, hey, it works on an iPhone, why won't it work on an Android phone? Well, we fixed that. Now it does. It works on an Android phone as well as an iPhone, as well as an iPad, and certain tablets it will work on as well that are running Android. And then, of course, there's the Fire OS for Amazon little devices. And then, of course, there's Mac and PC. So that's where Notion Mobile comes from. It comes from finding a solution to that request from a lot of Notion customers. So we did it. We made it completely cross-platform, and it's free. Doesn't cost you a penny. So with the free app, you get the core sounds, which are the same as the bundled sounds for Notion 6, which were also free for Notion 6 as well. And then if you register the app in your MyPersonus account, you get a little welcome pack that unlocks using all 4 voices per stave, and gives you a couple of extra sounds, and there's something else that escapes my memory right now. But yeah, and then of course you can make the in-app purchase. And there is only one in-app purchase now. There's not like multiple ones. There's just one. And when you make that in-app purchase, that unlocks the handwriting tool and all of the expansion sounds. Boom, in one in-app purchase. Now, if you have Notion for iOS and you bought the handwriting tool and you bought the sounds, you can restore those purchases on your iOS device. There's a restore purchases button there, and you can use that, and all of those purchases will be restored to the new Notion mobile app on your iOS device, because Notion for iOS was originally iOS only, so it will only restore those purchases made on iOS devices. It won't restore it to a Mac, it won't restore it to a PC, it won't restore it to an Android or a Kindle or anything else. It will only restore those purchases on an iOS device. So if you want to use the same sounds from the expansion sounds on the iOS device and you want to do the same thing on the PC you'll have to make the in-app purchase to unlock it on the PC, because it's a different platform and it's all done through a different app store. So that's fairly common for cross-platform apps, because they are cross-platform and therefore they are sold through different app stores. So there isn't like one in-app purchase that works on every platform at once. You have to go through the individual app stores for each platform. So if you've got iPhone and iPad, that's one. If you've got Mac, that's another. If you've got PC, that's another. So that's kind of 3 times you have to do that in-app purchase. And that's actually standard for cross-platform apps, I'm afraid. That's just the way it works. Nothing to do with us. It's not, anything that we can do about. That's just the way it works, because the purchases are done through the individual app stores. But yeah, that's as far as I can answer that question, I'm afraid. Let's see. You were also asking about the emotion, not just the technical aspects of modes. I mean, I kind of said that major is kind of bright, and then kind of Dorian's a little bit darker, then Phrygian is kind of quite dark, and then Lydian's kind of very bright, actually. And I think it's particularly bright because you've got this raised fourth in the scale, which kind of makes, to me, that gives it a little bit of extra brightness to it. And then Mixolydian is just very strident, very domineering kind of scale, which is why I guess it gets used at jazz jam sessions everywhere. Hey, let's just vamp on the Mixolydian mode. Great, everybody can do that. It's basically a G7. Which incidentally is what All Blues, Miles Davis's All Blues, is written on. That's all kind of based around, it's kind of a blues in G, but it's kind of using more kind of a modal approach to blues. Ember says, I noticed that Notion Mobile will run on desktop. That's why I was asking. Yes, it will. Billy says, what can you say about Preset 7? You know, I cannot say enough about Preset 7. Preset 7 is the best preset of all presets anywhere, anytime, on any platform, any DAW. Preset 7 rules. Let's see. Roger says, thanks so much. Thanks for the explanations. You're welcome. Louis is here from Alps Media, my awesome sponsor and all-time good egg and good dude is here, which is great. Let's see. I think we are running out of questions. It does kind of look like I've got through all the questions. I'm going to go back up and see if I've missed anything. Because I answered Roger's question about inversion, about modes and mood and that kind of thing. Charlie's question was all about updating. And he says there was an issue a week or so ago brought up on Jonny's show. It's regarding opening up a V5 song in V6 and the automation being turned off but still working. You know what? I have not run into that myself, either in Studio One with my own use, and I certainly haven't seen it in support tickets. That's for sure. So that's an unusual one. If we run into it, I guess, you know, we'll figure it out, because that's what the support guys do. I kind of, at the moment, do less and less in support and more in QA at the moment. But I'm kind of hoping that that may change. Let's see. Squirrel's asking, Rich, I'd love to bend your ear when you're available. Tried the Rolly interface but could not figure out a way to have it perform as a multi-CC MIDI expression controller without note send. I have no idea how that works. So sorry to disappoint you, because I don't have a Rolly. I don't have a Rolly device at all. And I've heard they're pretty awesome. I have seen some pretty awesome musicians play them, and they look really, really cool. But to me, it doesn't excite me playing rubber keys. That just doesn't really do it for me particularly. But it does look interesting with, all the amounts of expression you can get. So for synth players, Rollies probably are phenomenal for synth players. I'm not really a synth player. I'm a keyboard player. I play keyboard instruments. I play, real pianos. I play real electric pianos. I play a real Hammond organ. But I have this guy here, which has basically got everything I need in one instrument. Which is great. This thing is heavy. I will tell you that. If you ever have to carry this, it's heavy. It weighs like as much as a person, I think, in some respects. But it's fantastic. I wouldn't trade this for anything. And I know that there are newer versions of it out now, but you know what? I couldn't afford to get a new one, because they are not cheap. Roger Beckett says, Joe Gilder recently mentioned differences between an audio engineer and a music producer. These days, many of us have to wear both hats. How do you suggest we switch between the two seamlessly? Um, yeah, that's a tough one because there are similar kind of things that one does as a producer and as an audio engineer. I think Joe's way of kind of separating the two out was to compartmentalize a bit. And I kind of agree and disagree with that. I agree that you need to be able to separate your tasks so you don't get yourself in a confusion and you don't get yourself in a muddle and you don't blur the lines between one thing and another, even though that's incredibly easy to do, especially if you're a one-person operation like I am. I do all the songwriting, I do the arranging, I am the recording artist, I'm also the session musician for the most part, and I'm also the producer as well. And then after that, I'm also the mix engineer and the mastering engineer. So I've got that many hats that I wear when making a record for myself, making my own records. But there are some distinctions. Joe kind of talked about audio engineering being science as opposed to production, which is much more kind of making artistic decisions, and less about making technical decisions. Being an audio engineer is about making technical decisions to help and support the artistic decisions that may actually have already been made, or you are kind of making those decisions. Because here's the thing, sometimes you have artistic decisions that will directly impact on the technical decisions as well, because you may have a particular artistic vision, a particular artistic idea that requires a technical solution to make that happen. So, for example, producers of dance music in particular may well want to do like a band pass filter to knock out all the low end for a particular section of a song and make everything sound like it's like on the tiniest of tinny earbuds or cheap little speakers, just to kind of change how things sound so you've not got the pumping low end all the time, which is going to be ear fatiguing. It's pretty cool to have a section where there's just no bass. So you can do that by automating a band pass filter, like a high pass filter, and you automate it so it gradually rolls up until it's like up at like, I don't know, 3K or something. So basically all you've got left is 3K and above in the mix for a section of your song, and then you would roll it back the other way, slowly, maybe, over a period of, a couple of bars, maybe. Now that is an artistic decision, because that's not a normal mixing procedure. You wouldn't normally set a high-pass filter at 3K on your master bus. That's not normal. But you have the artistic desire to create that effect where you want everything to be really thin and tinny and then gradually open up again. Or maybe you want everything to be really muddy and sound like it's underwater for a particular period of time. So in that case, you want to do the other way. Rather than a high pass filter, you maybe want to do a low pass filter and roll off everything until everything just sounds like it's underwater for a period, and then roll it back out again. There's different things that you might want to do. But what you're doing there is you're taking an artistic idea which is to create that thinness or that muddiness deliberately to serve the purpose of the song, but then you need a technical solution to make that happen, and that's where you're using the automation of the bandpass filter. So there is some cross-pollination between production and audio engineering. The producer says, hey, let's have everything go really thin for this little pre-chorus bit. And then we go boom, and we drop the low end back in again. Your audio engineer is the one that's going to say, okay, that's a great idea. That would sound fantastic. We will do that with a bandpass filter that we automate. So you've got the artistic idea and you've got the technical solution that makes the artistic idea happen. So there is some cross-pollination, in my opinion, and especially if you're wearing both hats, because you're the one, you are the one person doing everything. There is less compartmentalization. You can't say that because that word doesn't exist. There is less compartmentalizing of things. You don't make things into little boxes. Here is my production box. Here is my mixing box. Here is my songwriting box. Here is my mastering box. You can do that, and it might help you personally to break things up like that and have more kind of rigid lines between the different aspects of end-to-end kind of creating the product. That works for some people. That probably works for Joe. It would probably work less for me. Because for me, the art and the science kind of go hand in hand. They are much more kind of like this for me than they are like this next to this. Some people it is like that. It's kind of like, here's the audio engineering, here's the production, and they are walking side by side. For me, they're not just walking side by side, they're actually holding hands, they have an arm around each other's shoulders. And that for me is how I make my music. So I hope that very long explanation helps. Ember says the in-app purchases are not working on Amazon Fire devices. Well, that's probably an issue, perhaps, with the App Store on Amazon. It may be, but like I said, you cannot restore purchases to the Amazon Fire device because those purchases from Notion for iOS were never available for Amazon in the first place. So it's entirely new. You're going to have to make the purchase brand new rather than restoring purchases. But yeah, that could be an issue with Amazon itself, in which case that is really outside of Presonus's domain to be able to do anything about. You're going to have to contact Amazon to deal with that. I suspect. I mean, by all means, make a support ticket and we'll take a look. But pretty much, it's probably going to be something you need to work out with Amazon. Let's see what else we got. I guess there's no one size fits all. You just have to find what works for you. Yeah, I think so. Amazon doesn't support it. Amazon doesn't support what? I think you'll find it does, but I'm going to double check because I actually do work with this. Products, software. Mobile. So, let me share my screen. All right, so this is the Notion Mobile product page on Presonus.com. Get it free from your favorite app store. So you can get it from the Apple App Store, Google Play, Amazon App Store. You can get it from Microsoft. You can get it from the Mac App Store. Now, let's go to tech specs. And if we look over here, Amazon Fire, you need to have Fire OS 7 or later. Supported devices, this is important. Fire 7, Fire HD 8, Fire HD 10, Fire HD 10 or above. 11th Gen 2021. This is important for what Amazon Fire devices are supported. Okay, so this is particularly important. If you're working with an Android device, you need to be running Marshmallow or later, so Android 8 or later. and this would be phones, tablets, or Chromebooks. And this is really important. You need to have Google Play Store installed on these devices. So you need to have it on your phone, the tablet, or the Chromebook. Got to have Google Play installed, otherwise it won't work. All right, let's go down to iOS devices. You need to be running iOS 11 or iPad OS 11 or later. And here are your supported devices: iPhone SE, iPad 5th Gen, iPad Mini 4, iPad Air, or iPod Touch 6th Gen. These are the devices that it will work on. So these are the minimum. So 5th Gen minimum iPad. I have iPad 8, 8th Gen. Works just perfectly on mine. Mac OS, Apple laptop and desktop computers running 1014 or later. Windows, so Windows tablets, Microsoft Surface, laptop, desktop computers running Windows 10 or later. Okay, and preferably like the most recent build of Windows 10. Although I'm running 21H1 at the moment on my PC. And it works fine on that. So it doesn't have to be the latest and greatest build from Microsoft Windows 10, but it will work on a couple of builds older. But don't work on a really old version of Windows 10 because it likely won't work. But yeah, so it does work on Amazon Fire. Those are the devices that are supported for Amazon Fire. Billy Morgan has an after show that he is going to run, which is cool. So immediately after the show, I think. Ember says the software is working fine. However, if I try to purchase the handwriting, it fails to allow the in-app purchase. Yeah, the in-app purchase is not just for handwriting, it's for everything. There's just one in-app purchase now. So it unlocks everything. It unlocks the expansion sounds. It unlocks the support for 4 voices per stave, as well as the handwriting tool. But yeah, by all means, put in a support ticket. But this is likely something that you may have to work out with Amazon. There may be an issue there. Because as I said, the in-app purchase is done through the Amazon store. It's not done through Presonus. So it's done through the Amazon App Store. Okay? And that's the same with every device. So if you're on Mac, the in-app purchase is done through your Mac App Store, probably your Apple ID, and then your App Store ID for your iPad or your iPhone. And then the in-app purchase for Microsoft, if you're running it on Windows, is all from the Microsoft Store. Okay, so those in-app purchases are done through those stores. They're not done through Presonus or through shop.presonus.com or anything like that. They are separate through those third-party vendors. So if the purchase is not happening, if the purchase is not working, then it may well be that there is an issue there. Personally, because I am kind of doing Notion mobile support almost exclusively at the moment because it's a new product, I have to say I am not seeing anybody reporting issues with the in-app purchase with a Fire device. In fact, I don't think I've seen a single ticket with Fire devices at all. So this will be a first. But we will test it and we will see. Okay, I don't have an Amazon Fire device, but I know that there is at least one in QA. So I can talk to our new QA guy who just started the job last week. I can talk to him and say, hey, can you test this? And see what he comes back with. But yeah, put in a ticket and I'll see what I can do for you. Okay? Can't make any promises that you're not going to have to contact Amazon though. Okay? All right, we are over time actually. And I think it'd be great if as many of us as possible could go to the after show on that Zoom link that Billy is very kindly hosting. I think that'd be really, really good to do. So if you guys are up for doing that, then please go and join in. But otherwise, I will bid you a very good night, and I will see you back here on Sunday for Sunday Night Live. If you have a subject that you want me to cover in depth for Sunday's show, go to the website down there, jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk. Scroll down to the bottom of the page. There is a contact form there. Fill that out. And send me your suggestion, the topic that you want me to cover in depth this Sunday, and we will do it. And if I get a few suggestions, then we will do them over the next several Sundays. That would be cool. All right? So until then, folks, I bid you a good night. Good night.